82 unions and liberal groups urge Biden to go bigger on tax hikes and hold the wealthy accountable. Business Insider story. President Joe Biden has unveiled his first part of his multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure proposal, which could end up being $3.5 trillion in tax hikes. 82 national organizations led by Americans for Fair Tax Fairness sent a letter to Biden and Vice President Harris commending the administration efforts to raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans and encouraging the president to go further, right? So they're kind of pitching and saying that this is not enough. We got to go higher. So corporate taxes, they're going to lift it from 21% today to 28%.
That's what they're talking about.
Yep. Restored state level taxes back to 2009 levels, meaning that still only the richest 0.59 of states would get taxed. Return the top tax marginal rate on the highest incomes to 39.6 from 37 today. AOC came back and said 2.25 is nothing. We need way more than that. She pitches a $10 trillion plan.
Well, if it's AOC, I mean, my gosh.
If it's AOC,
she's obviously the expert in everything. She's an expert in climate. She's an expert in all things tax-wise.
Obviously,
and
you're
economy.
a big fan of her.
Oh,
you're a big fan of her. I can tell already.
Yeah, she's so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Progressive Democrats unveiled the $10 trillion version of the infrastructure and climate legislation. Now, people are asking, what's going to be in this money here, right? The $2.25 trillion. Where is this money going to be going to? He released a sweeping plan to pump money into transportation, renewable energy, manufacturing, efforts to combat climate change funded by undoing, To cover the cost, Biden wants to raise it. We already talked about it. Here's the numbers. Plan provides $620 billion for transportation, $174 billion for electrical vehicles, $180 billion for R&D, research and development, $300 billion to boost American manufacturing, $100 billion for workforce development programs, including training for those who have lost their jobs, as well as apprenticeship initiatives, $100 billion to build a more resilient electric grid, $111 billion for clean water, $100 billion for broadband internet, $213 for housing, $137 for schools and childcare, $400 billion to take care of the elderly and the disabled is what they're saying. And Biden says this is going to boost the economy, is what he feels about it. So before I get to the next article, I'm going to turn it over to you, Byron. What are your thoughts about this thus far?
That's a huge question because you read a lot of stuff. One of the problems that we have is that there are people that can remain in power by creating class envy, and a lot of the tax increases don't really bring in that much money. If you remember, back in the 80s, Reagan introduced a gentleman by the name of Art Laffer. Remember Art Laffer?
Of course. He's from Nashville, Tennessee.
The Laffer curve.
Didn't you interview him?
I did.
People don't understand the Laffer curve. To this day, most people, especially young people, they've never heard of Art Laffer. They don't understand that.
They're missing out. The guy's a genius.
They don't understand that if you tax people, let's say at 100%, okay, you raise the taxes on the rich to 100%, how much money are you going to get from the rich? Nothing. They're not going to work. If you tax them at 0%, you're also going to get nothing. So there is an optimum number where you get maximum revenue. We talked about this yesterday on the capital gains thing. When Obama was debating Hillary in the 2008 election for the nomination to be the Democratic nominee for president, I think it was Charlie Rose or one of the big mainstream guys asked Obama. He said, "Look, Mr. Obama, you said you're on record as supporting an increase in the capital gains tax, but history shows each time the capital gains tax was raised, the government received less money from capital gains taxes, and each time the tax was lowered percentage-wise, the government received more money from capital gains taxes. So knowing that raising the taxes might likely bring in less money for the government, would you still be for raising the capital gains tax?" And Obama's answer was, shockingly, and this is when he completely lost me and a lot of other people, not that I was ever in his corner, but he said, "Yes, I would, for purposes of fairness." And I'm thinking to myself, how stupid can you be? I mean, raising taxes if you're going to bring in less money doesn't make any sense. We had corporate taxes before Trump at 35%. Corporations in other parts of the world were down as low as, I think, 9 or 10%. And so what happened is lots of jobs left. Those companies basically domesticated themselves in other parts of the world, and we lost jobs. Obama said nothing you can do about it, but there was something you could do about it. You could become competitive tax-wise. One could argue that the corporate tax is kind of ridiculous to begin with because it creates double tax on the same dollar. If you own a C corporation, which individuals can own, most individuals don't set up their companies as a C corporation for this reason, but all large companies are C corporations. They're taxed at whatever the number is. Today it's 20%, 21%. What is it?
21
is right now.
Yeah.
It used to be 35 in 2017. We
so
were the
it's
highest in the world.
So
it's
let's
21. They want to raise it to 28.
To simplify the math, let's just
Yeah.
call it 20. You make $1, you pay 20 cents in tax. That leaves 80 cents. Now, where does the 80 cents go?
We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it slow. Pull up Microsoft Word, and here's how we're going to do it. Everybody has to see it, and make the font big. It's very, very important. Can you do Word, or we don't have it? Okay, so make it bigger so we can all see the size. Can you increase the size of font? Click that. Okay, can we make it bigger or no? Is there any way we can make that bigger?
Like a 50-point font.
Just write something first and then see if we can make it bigger. It's very, very important for you to see this. By the way, I have the whole transcript between Charlie Rosa's conversation and I have the whole thing in front of me. I want to read this. By the way, if you missed what Byron, you just kind of went through it quickly. I think it's very important for the audience to understand what this really means when you're explaining it, and I want you to explain it again, show it visually.
Well, we can, but the bottom line to remember before we go in, and then we'll talk about it at the end, the bottom line is that raising tax rates does not necessarily bring in more money, doesn't necessarily raise revenues. So they say, we got to raise taxes to pay for that. Well, you could raise tax rates, but you may collect less money because if you collect more.
100%.
So that's critical.
So go to 50 points. Go to 50 points. Okay, put $1 million there. So say a company does $1.25 million. Just put $1.25 million in profits, $1.25 million, okay? So that's profits that a corporation, this is a small business. This is not a big business, okay? The CEO takes $250,000 of salary. So take $250,000 of salary. Just put $250,000, just put $250,000, yep, $250,000 out, which he pays on that $250,000, say 40% taxes. What's the number on the $250,000?
100.
So 40% taxes, which is how much?
100.
So put $100,000 below it. Put $100,000 right there, okay? Which means he nets right below 100, right? Nets 150, okay? 150. Which, by the way, just put K next to it. Just put K next to it. It's easier. Yeah. So which you net 150. Now keep this in mind. That's if you live in states that don't have state taxes. So we're just kind of putting it for. If you're in California, add another 11% to it, which means you're only keeping 125. But let's just stay with this right here, right? Mm-hmm. So what's left after 250 is taken out? $1 million. So now go below and put $1 million. Put a bit of a space, so it's separating the two. Yeah, go one more. Put $1 million visually to see this. That $1 million right now, you're paying 21% corporate taxes on, which put 21% below is, $210. Okay. Now let's take it to 28, which what they want to do at 28%. You would pay $280,000, so just write down $280,000. Leaves you with what? $720, okay, net. $720. Now, if the CEO says, you know what, I'm not going to leave the money here because I'm going to end up eventually paying what kind of taxes?
Excess accumulation tax.
Excess accumulation taxes. So screw it. Let's just take this money out. If you take that $720 out, how much money you pay on that?
40%.
40% on $720 is what? $288. So 40% on 720 is 288. Put another 288 out. 288 out of 720 is 432. So put 432 at the bottom. 432. This is all if you live in a non-state taxes. This changes if you live in a different state, right? 432 you net on $1 million. How much taxes did you pay? 56.8% in taxes. You're getting double tax. Tax on tax on tax on tax.
Not to mention that when you go spend that money, you're going to pay sales tax, and all kinds of property tax and all the other taxes.
So when people say, let me read this to what you said. I think it's very, very important. It's exactly the transcript from April 17, 2018, okay? Obama sitting down with Charlie Rose, and here's how Gibson is who it was, not Rose, Gibson, okay? In last night's Democratic presidential debate, this is when they say last night, April 16, 2008.
Actually, so during the debate, he actually said was the conversation.
Democratic presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Moderator Charlie Gibson and Obama had the following exchange, courtesy of ABC News. Videos available. I don't have it with you. I don't want to show because they'll take it down. Gibson, all right. You have, however, said you would favor an increase in capital gains tax. As a matter of fact, you said on CNBC, and I quote, I certainly would not go above what existed under Bill Clinton, which was 28%. It's now 15%. That's almost a doubling if you went to 28%. But actually, Bill Clinton in 1997 signed legislation that dropped the capital gains tax to 20%. Obama says, right. Gibson continues. And George Bush has taken it down to 15%. Obama says, right. Then Gibson says, in each instance, when the rate dropped, revenues from the tax increased. The government took in more money when capital gains was dropped. And in the 1980s, when the tax was increased to 28%, revenues went down. So why raise it all, especially given the fact that 100 million people in the country own stock and would be affected? Obama. Well, Charlie, what I've said is that I would look at raising the capital gains tax for purposes of fairness. We saw an article today which showed that the top 50 hedge fund managers made $29 billion last year. $29 billion for 50 individuals. And part of that was what has happened is that those who are able to work the stock market and amass huge fortunes on capital gains are paying a lower tax rate than the secretaries. That's not fair. And what I want is not an oppressive taxation. I want business to thrive and I want people to be rewarded for their success. But I also want to make sure that our tax system is fair, that we are able to finance healthcare, et cetera. So it goes into the whole thing, right? But the point is this. History tells us you raise capital gains, the government doesn't get more revenues.
Well, people can control the timing of gains, so you don't have to pay capital gains tax if you don't have capital gains.
Yeah.
You can avoid selling stock,
Sure.
and people control.
You're discouraging me. So, for example,
correct.
if this is going to pass in 2022, what do you think is going to happen in 2021?
Everyone's going to sell their
That's
stocks
the
immediately.
point. And then what do you think people do in 2022, 2023, 2024 until somebody
Just
gets...
hold on to it.
Just hold on to it. So what happens to commerce?
The potential.
Well, I don't know how it affects commerce. I can just say that the bottom line is there should be an argument for effectiveness versus what feels good, and it's about making things sound fair and punishing people for achievement and everything else to make everything equal, to equalize tax rates. It doesn't make any sense. It's all about generating revenue. It's the same thing when you talk about in the military. What you've got now is you've got people running it that think the most important thing is you have to have diversity of skin color. Okay, diversity of thought, diversity of capability, that's one thing, but it's all about effectiveness. If that makes us more effective as a fighting force, that's great. But if it doesn't, let's not do it. It's not about trying to make it look pretty. It's all about making it be effective. And I think the tax system should be effective. We were going to talk about they're talking about estate taxes going up. Estate taxes have never generated any significant revenue. And in fact, even corporate taxes generate less than 10% of the revenue from income or corporate taxes. It's not the main source of revenue. So why would you want to become uncompetitive here, make our tax rate higher relative to other countries of the world, and have companies decide, hey, where are we going to set up shop? We got a new startup. Should we incorporate in Ireland or should we incorporate here in the U.S.? Well, in the U.S., we're going to get punished and tortured with all kinds of regulations and OSHA and unions and all this other stuff. Let's go someplace where they're more friendly to business. I see no reason why we would not want to attract more jobs. But you've got our country was invented by geniuses, and it is now run by idiots.
By the way, on top of that, just check this out. Here's the other part. Let's not forget. U.S. companies operating abroad who are paying nothing abroad are currently paying a 10.5% minimum tax to the U.S., right? These are companies that are operating abroad. The Biden plan would raise that from 10.5% to 21%.
Doubling it.
Doubling it?
Yes.
Which, just so you know, there's a part of that I don't have a problem with because I want the jobs to be more here, but still, 10.5 to 21 is still a big number. On top of all the other proposals, the Biden plan imposes a 15% tax on financial statement income of companies if they don't otherwise pay that much. So this tax thing isn't.
But again, that's at the corporate level.
That's at the corporate
It's
level.
at the corporate level, and then
So,
any of the profits of that company, which go to the shareholders, which are everybody out there, we're all shareholders in something. That's every dollar that comes to you has already been taxed, and now you're going to be taxed on it again. It's double taxation. I have no idea how that ever was invented, but it was.
Adam.
Well, this is one of those topics, especially when it comes to corporate tax, that you got 2 ears for a reason. I'm doing a lot of learning. I'm doing a lot of listening, and I appreciate some of your perspective that we shared yesterday on the whiteboard. So I'm learning now. The part that, Pat, that you said that you agreed with, I'm going to make a metaphor here, but is it the part that you said U.S. companies operating abroad who are paying nothing abroad pay a 10.5 minimum tax to the U.S.? Biden would raise that to 10.5 minimum to 21%,
which is doubling.
Is this kind of like that tourist tax you talked about, with Florida.
No, this
a couple
is what
podcasts ago.
this is what Trump did. Trump went to people, businesses who had their money offshore, and said, "What? One time you bring your money, you're going to pay minimal amount to bring your money to U.S. Right? One time, and if you bring your plants over here, Trump was trying to bring plants to do business in U.S. Don't forget, Trump was threatening businesses that if you're doing business out of the country, he was planning on making it very difficult for you because he wanted everything to be what? Made in USA, made in America. That's what Trump wanted to do. So I understand where he's going with this part.
America first versus America last.
Sure, and I understand that part. I understand if you're doing a tax to say, bring your money here, bring your business here,
do
bring
business
it to
here,
America.
bring your jobs here.
I would give an incentive rather than taking a route of bring it here and I'm still going to tax you more if you bring it here. Business is going to say, dude, I'm not bringing it to U.S. because it seems like the more I bring it to U.S., I'm not going to bring it to U.S. So when they say, well, I watched the MSNBC, I was watching MSNBC on the reaction to this taxes, and it was like, well, you know what all these guys do? All the billionaires, all they do is buyback. Everything, like everybody's put into the same box, as if everybody does buybacks, as if everybody that's rich is a bad person, as if everybody that makes money has offshore accounts, as if everybody that has a business that's a billionaire pays people $7 an hour. It's as if everybody that has money is a bad person. Like the way they are generalizing with everyone being in a box. You know, there's a lot of people that
don't understand the math. They're not good at math. They don't understand the math problem.
That's
if you
why
took
when
all
you
the money,
when you explained this yesterday, here's Adam. Adam's not a guy that's sitting on $50,000 in the bank. Adam's got money. Okay, Adam's done well for himself in the last 15 years. He's made a name for himself. He's one of the best at what he does. He's not just a regular guy. When people think about that specific product that he sells, they know this guy's name. Even Adam was like, I don't think this is fair. So think about it. Even Adam yesterday said, I don't think this is fair. So you got a corporate tax rate. I'm going to pay 28, and then if I take the rest, I'm going to pay 40. You're taxing me at 58, 59%. If you add another 11% taxes, that's 69%. What the hell am I working for?
Well, you understand that in the 1950s, you know what the...
I was literally just going to go here.
I mean, you understand what the
it's
tax
double
rates
what it is now.
I mean, double.
90%.
90%, and anything over like 200 grand, you paid 90%.
Well, your boy Reagan.
And Reagan was like, look, I'm paying 90% if I make another movie, plus the California state tax. By the time he was done, he was paying 99% taxes. He says, why should I make another movie?
Well, the famous story with Reagan was that he would only make 2 movies a year because he would make $100,000 a movie. And if you made anything over $200,000, you would pay 90-something% taxes. So he's like, why the frick would I pay?
That's an impediment to commerce. You don't want to punish achievement. You don't want to punish a business who's got a printing company and he says, should I buy another printing press? And should I double? And I should double my jobs and everything else. Why would I bother doing so if I take all the risk and if I win, I don't get to keep most of the money? We're already paying over 50% on all the taxes. I mean, at what point? And I ask my lefty friends, like, how much is too much? Mm-hmm. What number is just too much? And if you talk to AOC, she'll say 90%. That's what she says.
Top tax rate.
She thinks that
people forget in this country, like taxes are lower than it's ever been in the history of America.
Stop it, buddy.
In history, top marginal tax rate?
No. That was 28%. In 1988.
Okay. I'm saying relatively speaking, whether you're talking 20s and 30s now.
Well,
20, 30s a percentage.
By the way,
understand Kennedy dropped it to 70.
Back in the day, it was 90-something%.
Right, but Kennedy dropped it to
from
70.
1920 to 1980.
You act as if it was 90% for like years.
It was.
It was 90% for a long time.
What's a long time?
Decades.
15 years.
90% was top line.
Longer than decades.
What income?
Longer than decades.
Marginally, the nth dollar over 200.
Nth dollar over 200 was at what? 90%?
Yes. Maybe it was 400. It might have been 400.
So how did rich people take their monies out? What did they do?
Well, there was a lot of deductions and things like that. But they obviously figured out ways to not show income.
There's no way in the world. I mean, it's not like that strategy is going to work.
Check what I just sent you. We should pull this up.
90% for people above 200 for decades.
Yes.
What year was this, and who was president?
Well, it was all through the 50s,
everything,
all through the 50s and part of the 40s for sure. I mean,
what was the common sense behind this?
I don't think there was any.
What was the logic behind it?
Well, the tax code has always been complex.
Here you go. Check this out.
91% go down.
Started in the 50s. Okay.
No, not actually 50s. If you go to the 30s, 30s. You got 80%. Okay, so you got 81 to 94.
This is when the war was going on. So it started in World War II.
So 63, it was at 91%. So you're talking about a 25-year 90% top line. Now, what was top line? Tell me what top line was.
Like the number that you had to make?
I can tell you that in
Keep going up. See if
1980,
they showed on the bottom what top line was in. Go put up 1963 top marginal rate income. See if anything comes up. Go ahead. You were saying
in
1980.
1980, I believe it was
$200,000.
400 grand, and you paid 70% in 1980 on everything over 400
So
grand.
people forget, this was my point, Pat.
Plus
People
your state
forget-
tax.
Right now, whether it's 21% or 28% or 30 or 40% even, people forget that it was as much as 70, 80, 90% for decades in this country. Which I mean, none of us were even freaking alive then, but how does that something like that happen?
I think it's important to
Our
understand.
friend Democrat,
Go to the Tax
JFK,
Foundation. Click on that.
he cut it.
Democrat cut it. John F. Kennedy cut it.
Can
He
you
would not
believe
be a
that?
Democrat today.
He'd be a moderate. He'd be a
No,
Joe
he would
Manchin
be a
Democrat.
Republican.
The tax rate. The rates from 1950 to 2000. 1950, top of the 91% richest taxpayer claimed roughly equivalent amounts of entrepreneur income and claimed equal amounts of wage income and entrepreneur income in terms of business. Passive, okay, got it. Over the next 30 years, as high as tax persisted percentage of entrepreneur income claimed by the rich dropped from roughly 35% in 1950, 7.8 in 1981. The likely cause was the gulf between the top individual tax rate and corporate tax rate. During the 1950s, the top tax rate on traditional C corporations was 52% and some 39% lower. 39 points lower than top individual tax income. Kennedy's tax cut in 1963 lowered the top rate to 70% and the corporate 48%. So very, Kai, go a little bit higher for me to see the bottom right here. Go ahead. Yeah, right there. Keep going. I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
What's really important is to understand that no matter what the top tax rate is, and this is a nominal number, okay, it's just there's a number there. The way people behave and what they actually pay doesn't necessarily match this. So in years where it was 90%, if you took a guy who made $10 million, say, how much money did you pay in tax last year? He wasn't paying $9 million in tax if he made $10 million. He had all kinds of deductions. He could deduct his yacht. He could deduct this. And
Well, it's marginal tax rates.
I'm just saying there was all kinds of ways. So the effective tax rate is really what you need to look at, not the actual marginal rate. My point is, what makes sense is to structure the tax structure so it brings in the most revenue. That's not necessarily by raising rates. There's no static analysis. You have to do dynamic analysis. They make a really, really weak effort to do dynamic analysis when they change tax rates. You got people like AOC, who's an expert at, 2 years ago, she was an expert at making bar drinks as a bartender, and now she's an economist.
Keep going.
It's insane that she thinks she knows, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. I mean, how could she know any of this? I mean, she's been there 20 minutes. What does she run? I mean, she was making.
You know what I wonder during that time? What I wonder is how many companies were founded during that time. I would love to sit down.
Well, I mean, started.
You know what? You know what? Make a
were,
note. Make a note. Let's bring on Arthur Laffer on.
That would be great.
It's been about 4 years since we had him on.
Would love
Let's
to.
bring Arthur Laffer on. Do you want to join
I
that
would
if
love
we bring
to
him on?
join.
So why don't we do and see if we can do a group of 4. So it's the 4 of us with Laffer. Let's get him out here. I don't know if he's traveling or not. He's in Nashville, Tennessee. If not, maybe we'll call him up. Maybe we'll call him up and we'll do a call-in with him, with Arthur Laffer. Yeah,
in the 80s, we went into the 80s in 1980 with a 70% marginal rate plus whatever the California, Minnesota, New York crazy state taxes were. Crazy high taxes, horrible economy. We came out of the 80s with a 28% tax rate, okay? And the economy was booming, and it boomed all the way through the 90s. Clinton raised taxes, okay, because he could get away with it. Raising taxes wasn't what helped the economy in the 1990s. It was the fact that we lowered the taxes and companies just started investing and said, my God, I get to keep 72 cents of every dollar. I'm gonna put my money back in my companies. I mean, that made a lot of sense.
You have no idea how much this is, Kai. This is the next how-to we're gonna do. We're gonna take a deep dive on taxes, history of taxes. I want every single article ever written on this. I want to read every single article written on this. Period. I don't care if it takes me 50 hours. Anything that we pull up, put a stack of articles. Historically, what happened with it? Let's go through every single one. Have our research guys start working on it ASAP.
So, Pat, you didn't know that taxes were
No,
this
I knew
high?
it was 90%. What I didn't know the timeline. I thought it was less than a decade. I didn't know it was 3 decades that this thing went through. I thought it was a decade that it went through because of World War II and World War, and we're trying to collect
all the way
money.
through the 50s.
Korean War,
I totally
Vietnam
get that.
War.
No, I totally get the part that they had it, but I didn't know what the timeline was. I thought it was less than a decade. 3 decades.
3 decades, yeah, that's what's crazy. Through
The other thing is
Republicans and Democrats.
What were the results? What were the results of having it that way? I mean, what did it do? Because
Well, there's no way to know unless you have two petri dishes of not doing it that way and doing it that way. I mean, unless you have two people, two separate economies that are identical.
what is the incentive, though? What incentivizes somebody to really work their tails off to
Well,
build something?
you take away a lot of the incentive when the taxes are that high.
But
What they did was they said, look, you don't if you
what
invest
was innovation like?
Well, if you invest in this, then you don't have to pay it. So rather than pay it, you say, if I make this dollar and I don't do anything, I'm going to pay 90%
I don't
tax.
believe that 90% is the 90% that you think it is. I think the viewer thinks it's like you make $100,000, you pay $90,000.
No,
if you don't do anything, if you don't do anything,
you got 1,000,001 write-offs that they probably had at the time. So that
and
91% was probably like a 40% tax.
Well, this is probably what
the
and as we talk
effective
about the-
tax rate was lower, again, with individuals, even companies. My point is that if you make $1 million and you keep it, you're going to pay $900,000 in tax. Or on the next $1 million, the nth $1 million. If you take that $1 million and you invest and you buy another printing press, then you can deduct it, so you don't have to pay. So basically, deductions were worth a lot more. Nowadays, it's deductible. What do you mean deductible?
Yeah,
deductible
because
I save 30, 40 cents on the dollar. It still costs money.
You-
In the old days, if something was deductible, it was almost free.
Go to corporate tax rate, history of corporate tax rate, and then go to history capital gains tax rate. Go to history corporate tax rate. Same exact thing you did. Do corporate, and let's do, go ahead. And pull it up. Go perfect. So let's take a look at this. Go years. Does it show you years or no? Wow.
I actually looked at this yesterday, and in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Look at that. 10%. Nothing.
What do you mean 10%?
Corporate tax rates were 10% in the 30s, 40s.
In the 30s, and then after World War II, the game
50s.
changed, and it went up to as much as 50%.
And then it goes, we've been the highest in the world for a long time. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the
And
world.
yet, it doesn't bring in that much money.
Now go to capital gains, history of capital gains taxes. Capital gains. Go ahead, click on that.
But
Let's see what comes up.
Can I just make a point
Yeah,
real
go
quick
ahead.
while you're doing this? This is sort of, look.
Go back and see if you can find a
People
chart.
are saying it's a socialism and Biden and Bernie, but people don't understand the history of taxes. It's been way higher than it is today.
How much is too high?
I mean, 1% is too high, but
How
it
much
is what
is
it
too
is.
much? What's a number that above which it's unreasonable?
Well, I mean, what's the state tax in Illinois?
5%.
Okay. What's the state tax in Florida and Texas? I've never paid
back,
state
see
tax
if
in
you
my
can
life.
find
I've only
another
lived in
chart.
Florida. So for me, 1% in state tax is too high. For you, 5% is fine because you'll stay there.
I'm talking about federal income tax.
Okay.
How much is too high?
Whatever your marginal tax bracket is. What are your I mean, I don't know what the number
is.
is.
50% too high?
Look, everyone wants to keep their money, but
Well, how much is too much?
I don't
How
know.
much is
I
reasonable?
don't
How much
know
should
the
the rich
number.
pay?
Interesting.
I don't know.
70% too high?
I-
You're not
there's
gonna say
there's no
70% 's
number.
too high?
Yes, it is too high.
Is
This why-
60% too high?
But that goes back to my point. Is everyone wants to harp on taxes these days as if it's just something that just appeared because of socialist Bernie Sanders or because of Obama.
Listen.
This was something that was going on for
I don't
3 to
think-
4
Yeah,
freaking decades.
I don't know. The only question I got is the following. You see a parent who's like, "Where'd you go? Who's that? Where are you going? What are you doing?" Like overly hovering over the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Girl turns 18 years old, dates 48 guys
Peace
within
out,
a 3-year
yeah.
period. Like, dude, screw you. I'm dating the tattoo guy with, tattoos on his forehead and drinks, ecstasy, partying. You can't say shit, and I'm living with him and I'm moving out with him. Say something, right? Okay.
Wow.
So we don't understand that for 2 decades, right? The consequence of being an overbearing parent, right? We also don't understand the consequence of taking away incentives for innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.